Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Tonight, I am going to be doing another show, another one of my conspiracy shows. So, with that being said,
Conspiracy! I'm sorry.
uh, I'd like to welcome B to the show. He's going to be on the panel as well as Mark Edworthy. Now, I believe it was you two. You two were the only ones that were on my last episode when it came to conspiracy, wasn't it? Or maybe
Yeah,
Otto was there too. I believe maybe
I I
it's been
thought
a
I thought
while.
it was us three.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
was just us three. Now, last week we had started it out where I wanted to get into Holderman, Elon Musk's grandfather, and then I also brought up a book called One Nation Under Blackmail by Whitney Webb. Now, I still want to hold on to some of Whitney Webb's stuff because that is actually very, very important in some of the stuff that where I'm wanting to go. Because with this book, it brings up how organized crime fits into the spy networks and how it all started in back during World War II. So I do want to hold on to that and kind of go over it, and but I also want to go further with this whole thing about Africa because a lot of people don't really understand. Like last time we had this conversation, and I think we've had it afterwards too in a couple of other shows where we've just I mentioned the fact how demoralized Africa has become, but people don't understand either how important Africa was and still is when it comes to a global scale because they don't see it. You know what I mean? Um,
Well, I mean,
Are you,
of course they see it.
are you talking about Africa continent?
Hold up, so that
You
we're
are talking about Africa as a continent, so
as a yeah,
that includes places like Egypt.
yeah, all of it,
Huh?
all of it. Yeah, you're right.
Africa
Okay.
has so many resources, more resources than the rest of the world, and it's being slowly raped and pillaged quietly. You won't see any stuff on American news. If you go to Europe and watch the news, they'll tell you what's going on in Africa. You won't hear it here in America because we
Mhm.
have so many troops over there raping and pillaging. It's the most quiet genocide and theft of resources in modern history, and it's so quiet.
All right, and when I brought Holderman up last week or last time we did this or on our last episode because it wasn't last week, but um, I mentioned Holderman, and there's one thing that Holderman had in common with Cecil Rhodes, and that was the fact that Holderman, like Cecil Rhodes, was actually a British uh, colonial, I guess you could say, who had migrated to Africa. And Cecil Rhodes was actually a British imperialist, and he was a mining magnate um, as well as a politician in England. And he influenced and shaped a lot of South Africa in the late 19th century. Are you guys aware of anything when it comes to Cecil Rhodes?
Now that you mention it, I've heard of his
Cecil
points.
was, yeah, Cecil Rhodes. Before you continue, not Cecil Rhodes.
Cecil, go ahead and tell me a little bit of
It could
what
be
you
an
know.
American. Cecil.
Go ahead, Englishman, tell me what you know. Can
Got
you
to
hear?
remind myself. It's been a long time since I've done any research on this. Um,
So I can break
Carry
it
on.
out. I can break it
You
out with a little bit of background on him. So um, he was born in England in 1853, and he traveled to South Africa as a teenager. And that was originally for health reasons. Now there he entered the diamond fields of Kimberley and Legon, where he built what would become like one of the most powerful business empires in the British Empire. Okay. He made his fortune in diamonds, basically. And he did this through aggressive consolidation. He also did it through political maneuvering and financial backing from European investors. Now, what basically happened was is he effectively regulated supply and influence pricing worldwide when it came to the diamond trade. Okay, and this wealth gave Rhodes enormous political leverage. He believed deeply in like British imperial expansion, and Rose argued that British rule was like a civilizing force, and that the Anglo-Saxon culture was destined to dominate globally, and he believed that 100%. And this goes back to the same thing with Holderman. Holderman was the same way. Okay, and people,
Remember the time they was living in. Uh, Britain still had a massive empire stretching three quarters of the world. So he believes, if you put it in context of the time, was sort of far led.
you're still there, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know for sure if you finished what you were saying or not, but
Yeah. I'm just saying that for the time, the time that he was living in, these ideas were sort of valid.
Right. Now, Rhodes, like I said, was very influential, but Rhodes also, because of his vision, he included like a continuous stretch of the British territories from Cape to Cairo. Okay, he linked southern and northern Africa under the imperial control during that time period. So this idea ended up influencing the infrastructure projects that took place, like the railways and the telegraph lines designed to bind colonies together, basically. And when that happened, Rhodes eventually served as prime minister of the Cape Colony from around 1890 to 1896. Now,
just one minor point on that. You said from South to North Africa, only within British held territories. Remember, we had the Dutch in. You're right. We had several countries, Germany, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So during his time in office, he supported policies that expanded British territories or territorial control, but he also advanced segregation. This is another thing that Holderman held. That kind of goes hand in hand. They both had that. And that started out from the get-go when it came to this expansion that took place in Africa. So like everything that happened in the 80s and the 90s and stuff, people need to understand this wasn't something new that just occurred, you know what I mean? This is something that was taking place all the way through this time period. From Cecil Rhodes.
What do you mean? What do you mean the 80s? You're talking about the 1880s, 1890s,
1980s. You don't remember the 1980s in South Africa?
Okay. Yeah, you're looking at it in.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It wasn't that just during that time period. This goes all the way back to Cecil Rhodes.
Yeah, because the political influences in the 80s and 90s. In the 80s, you had the Cold War. In the 90s, from 91, you had the Soviet Union breaking up, and that caused a massive vacuum in several countries.
Well, I'm talking about in Africa where freaking they actually got rid of freaking the what was it called again? It was what's the terminology they used for the old government that was there that was oppressing black people and torturing them? You remember what that was called? There's something P. It started with a P. Oh God, the uh
Apartheid.
the apartheid. Yeah, the apartheid.
Yeah, apartheid. Yeah,
That,
yeah. Big
that's
up the
that's when
rather than P, but that's what you call me.
that's what it was called. That was when the end of the apartheid came. But that whole system didn't just like rise up out of nowhere. It had always been there from the time Cecil Rhodes came into power and expanded the territory. So they were all living that way from the get go. Okay. All the way up until Holderman's time and into the 80s, where they finally liberated South Africa from the apartheid, you know. So I think that's important that people need to understand that, and that was taking place all that time period. You know, because during that time period, legislation, um, especially during Rhodes' administration, they restricted voters' rights for Black Africans. They eventually laid the groundwork for even more segregationist systems that would eventually become the apartheid later on, after he was dead, you know. So that's something that I
mindset
what'd you
of
say?
that. Can we just talk about the mindset of that
Yeah, go
as
ahead.
an invading people going to another land? I understand the need for expansion. I understand the need to gain wealth. Even I even understand the need to steal it. However, how are you going to go to someone else's home and then make them a non-citizen and have zero rights? That's the part I don't get.
Minimal rights.
Well, minimal rights is good as no rights.
So I've been part of human psyche since history began. This isn't a thing that happened only in the 18th or 19th century. This thing could go all the way back to first century AD. Go further back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not I knew then.
Yeah, I say it has benefit. I'm just saying it's not right. It's not even necessary. You can take the wealth. You can take up the space. Even you don't have to take away somebody's rights.
Well, you know, I mean, in today's world, yeah, that makes perfect sense what you just said there, you know. But when it comes
in today's world,
when it comes to the past, though, you put yourself into the time frame, especially even before the 1800s. You know what I mean? When you go back to like the time of the ancients, okay, like what people hear about like Genghis Khan and they hear about Alexander the Great, and they glamorize that stuff like these people were wanting to make a dynasty and a kingdom and everything, and that's not the truth. Everybody knew that the only reason why emperors freaking invaded other countries, because that was what a ruler did. It was about conquest.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it was about brutality. You know what I mean? They didn't care about. Well, I guess they did. You know what I mean? They wanted their people to see them as godlike, but in order to do that, it was about conquest, conquering. They're very brutal.
Well, there's the sort of there's also the civilized argument, bringing, let's say, medicine, bringing the removing the sort of tribal sects that already existed in that area, bringing in, I don't know, what we would, well, modern quote education.
All right. That
those areas.
That doesn't really apply to where I was going there, because that actually applies to what I was saying at the beginning. Is like, you got to take yourself out of today's thinking. You're thinking on the lines of an intellectual man who's trying to justify what happened back then with today's freaking terminology and our way of thinking. You know what I mean? But
Well, even back then, did they not bring medicine to?
no, Cecil Rhodes didn't give a damn about any of those people, dude.
Well, no, he didn't, but his actions allowed for.
He built railroads and you know what I mean. He built railroads. He built diamond mines. He wanted the natives to actually work those diamond mines, so he would use them as forced labor, things of that nature.
Railroads. What does railroads mean? It means easy infrastructure, or better infrastructure to bring your goods from A to B. It allows for faster, swifter communication.
Now,
between
you know what one of the most controversial episodes that was associated with Rhodes was, don't you? It was the Jameson raid. Have you ever heard of that one?
Rings a bell.
With the Jameson raid, it was an attempt, which was actually an unauthorized incursion into the Boer-controlled South African Republic. And Rhodes intended on triggering an uprising in order to extend British influence. Okay, now the raid failed, and it also, because it failed, it damaged Rhodes' political reputation.
Just on the point of the Boers, the Dutch were much more brutal than
the Dutch
Brits
were.
The Dutch
bane
were
of any brown person's existence.
Yeah.
It's like you're right. Anybody knows history, the Dutch were, oh my God, they're brutal. They're still brutal. They still are doing stuff in Africa.
Now, even though he did resign as prime minister, you need to understand, like, his economic and territorial influence, it remained really significant. You know what I mean? In the region, because he held power when it came to those diamond mines. And I apologize about that damn railroad. I don't know if you guys hear
the Underground Railroad.
The trains like blowing in the background and shit. You know what I mean? I was like, God, shut up, man. But you know what I'm saying? Like, his influence in the region was still very, very much influential. As a matter of fact, Rhodesia. You know what I'm saying? That's where do you think that name came from? You know,
Zimbabwe, actually, no, call it.
Mm-hmm.
What's his name? Oh, yeah.
Now, other than that, he also had a central role in the expansion north of the Limpopo River. Now, he did that through chartered company agreements backed by Britain, and he helped establish control over territories that were later named Rhodesia in his honor. Okay? These areas are now, like you said, Zimbabwe and Zambia. Now, the naming of Rhodesia, that kind of reflects, in my opinion, uh, the scale of his influence and the the imperial mindset of the era, basically. You know what I mean? Um, about conquest and about this is something that I did. You know what I mean? That's the mindset that took place there. There was no like honorable or freaking grandeur, honorable thing or any type of grandeur of how great this man was. It wasn't like George Washington or anything like that. You know what I mean? This was just pure conquest, him against the world and the people in it. And this is what he did, you know. So that's the one thing that really stuck out to me. You guys still there?
I don't
Yep.
know.
I'm here.
Was there not a form of sort of patriotism in that concept for the glory of Victoria?
Well, I think like
Oh.
the thing about it is that it comes back to people like Elon Musk's grandfather Holderman. Okay, now Holderman had the same mindset.
Mhm.
He went to frickin' Africa. He got involved in the frickin' diamond mines. Um, Everything that when you look at his history and his life, it just fits the mold of Cecil Rhodes. You know what I mean? So I think people idolized him, but they were also people who were into autocracy and segregation and things of that nature. You know, I mean, this was the land where you went to if freaking you wanted to rule over freaking the minorities and freaking be the leader of your land. You know what I mean? Or that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Mm,
I understand the history and the political corruption. Where's the conspiracy?
Well, the thing of it is like with Cecil Rhodes, he eventually built his wealth on the backs of the Africans through the diamond trades. He also established trades that were later considered the blood mines or the blood diamond trade.
Right.
Um, and through that, the conspiracy holds that he also formed what would later become the Trilateral Committee or Commission. Now, that one is something that I want to actually hold on for later because that brings in a lot of other people who um, are a, are a part of, or were a part of politics within the 20th century, and I do want to get into that. But like right now, the reason why I needed to bring Cecil Rhodes up is because like they've but they've said that he's donated to charities before he died where it helped out the poor and the unfortunate kids to have a better education and stuff like that, which he may have done, but there were also negatives to what he did too. Like he also set up um if it's true, he set up this trilateral commission, and this trilateral commission was a commission that was supposed to control the way freaking the way people were treated according to economies, according to what part of the world they came from, and things of that nature. So, and it had a lot to do with the economics thing. So I'm going to be getting into a lot of things that concern banking and how banking actually became what it is today. You know what I mean? This is something that I've been
okay.
wanting to do. I'm wanting to bring it more to the more modern conspiracies because last year I got into Sibel Edmond and a lot of her stuff that she was talking about. which I was really glad that I was able to get around to doing that because I wanted to bring some of that stuff up too. And this year I've been wanting to start out with Cecil Rhodes, go into the Trilateral Committee or Commission, and start talking about the banking systems and how the banking systems have been influenced and how they're influencing everything today, and what a lot of the conspiracists think about that, because you don't hear much about the banking part of it anymore. I used to go on the internet and I could find at least 5 6 videos that talk about freaking the banking system, but you don't find it anymore. So
Just to clarify your usage of the term conspiracy, are we talking about conspiracy theories here, or are we talking about conspiracy facts?
we can do both, can't we?
Yeah. I don't know. It's just because the usage of the word conspiracy is so synonymous with theories. So just got to check.
All right. Well,
Mm.
that's what I'm saying. It can be both. Now, last year I did my shows. I did them solo, and since you guys are here, man, if you want to frickin' come up with some facts or some conspiracy theories to go with it, go for it. You know what I mean? I have no problem with it. So, I mean that's perfectly fine with me.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff that started out with Cecil Rhodes too. Like I get sick of hearing people make him out to be like a martyr and everything. This man was not a martyr. He was not a good man. He did not do any great deeds. Historically, he was framed as a freaking a visionary empire builder and an educational philanthropist and shit like that. But I mean, the truth of the matter is, he played a role in this possession.
Arguably, you could argue that he was the better of the of the two evils.
I don't play the better of two evils kind of crap. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, there's no such thing as that. That's
Again, like I said, arguably.
Because the better of two evils only benefits somebody has to make that choice.
Yeah, two evils equals evil. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's no good in it. And then when you go into the exploitation, when it comes to the labor systems that he set up, you know what I mean? The inequality, the freaking slave labor. He also was the one who did the hierarchy policies that were put in place.
Hang on. Sorry, slave labor?
Yeah.
By 1880?
Exploitation.
Well, yeah. I think you're conflating the two.
Well, the mining operations, exploitation. They're still doing that, actually. That's the part about Africa that I was talking about, how it's been demoralized. Like, they're still doing it. There's still exploitation when it comes to these mining operations, and they're getting away with it. It's really sad.
We could have an argument about China and things like lithium mining and stuff at the present moment. But it's an odd one, because the argument is that you're going to need lithium to run phones and laptops and labs. It has to come from somewhere.
Well,
that's a bit of a controversial point, but
well, it comes down to things too, like they talk about, this funds, the Rhodes Scholarship, how great it is, okay, and like they don't point out that this isn't like this is supposed to be an international fund, okay, for international students to study, right? But they don't tell you that these are kids that are going to freaking the University of Oxford. You know what I mean? Like they're not helping just the average kid that's living in Rwanda trying to freaking, find food for his family to eat. They're, this is this is students who freaking are smart enough to go to freaking Oxford. You know what I mean?
Well, I was going to say Oxford being one of the leading educational institutes, but then again, looking at what's been happening in the last 20, 30 odd years, that's not really anything to boast about. That's there's the thought of that these countries are now independent, and it is for their own governments, their own society to sort these issues out, because they gained independence. So be independent.
Yeah.
So when it comes to understanding roads, what do you guys think is required to understand like what actually took place with concerns to roads and his actions in South Africa or Africa, period?
Critical race theory.
There was a book I've only flicked through, and I can't remember what it's called now. And it was a sort of modern look at, I think it was created published in the late 70s, early 80s. I can't remember what it's called now. And it looked at it. Looked
You're breaking up.
of late 70s, early 80s. I can't remember what it's called.
Well, I know that when I think of stuff like this, I think of there was a term that came out. It was called the scramble for Africa. You know what I mean? And it was all during Rhodes' time period. It was about rapid colonization of Africa. You know what I mean? And they referred to it as like the scramble for Africa, and that had a lot to do with like economic ambitions. There was like you said, with the rivalries, national rivalries, and also like I mentioned, the racial ideologies. You know what I mean? That's something I don't think that people should forget this stuff. I'm not one of those people who think that you need to be knocking down freaking statues because freaking they represented the Confederates. You know what I mean? And I like the Dukes of Hazzard.
Funny enough, I think
Well,
wasn't it Bristol back in 2012, 2013, when all the sort of woke migrants were in really at the peak. I think it was students in Bristol that I think there was a statue. I don't know if it's still there, but there was a statue of Rhodes in Bristol, and it was either defaced or damaged.
What was you getting ready to say, V?
So,
Oh yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I think like for these people that are so upset about the rebel flag and they must be taken down and da 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 da. No. That's freedom of speech, freedom of expression. On top of it, I would really like to know where my enemies are, or those people who are against me. I would like for them to announce themselves. To be honest with you, is nothing worse than a quiet, secret racist who are gonna do everything they can to harm you in any way they can behind the scenes or legally or whatever, That's out of view. If you're gonna be like some racist and Southern pride, we're gonna come back and win the next Civil War. Blah blah blah. We'll get those black people. Hey, I want not only do I want that guy to have a flag on his truck, I want him to have a scarlet flag uh, tattooed to his face and a patch on his arm. I want to know where these people are.
You
All
see,
time.
Uh, we saw this during the 70s and 80s in this country with um, uh, the British National Front, the so-called skinheads of that period.
it kind of reminded me of 1984, to be honest with you. Like what he just said just kind of made me think of freaking like Orwellian societies where everybody had to keep track of who their enemies were and they had to wear freaking well, actually, like the Nazis with the Jews, they had them wear that freaking badge on them.
Actually, in 1984, it was all about the creation of enemies. You created your enemy, or you
Mm.
Yeah.
deemed that person as your enemy, and therefore, that's.
So, like, I know that there's a lot of people who have split ideas when it comes to Cecil Rhodes. Some think of him as like a symbol, and some of them he represents colonial injustice and stuff like that. For me, uh, I just see the man as an ambitious, greedy, freaking self-righteous person who actually demoralized an entire region, if you ask me. You know what I mean? And it's not just because of the racial stuff, but it's also because of the kind of criminal underground networks that he actually developed. And there's a lot of people that likes to argue against this whole trilateral committee.
I appreciate the negative stereotypes and I understand them, but also, as I've stated, he aided in bringing in modern, for the time, society, culture, society,
That progress.
medicine, education, poor
Those tribes didn't need all that.
maternity. Yeah.
They were doing just perfectly fine before anybody come along with all that cool medicine. You know what I mean? It's like I see this.
Yeah,
That
I
cool
would have to
medicine
have
just
looked at
Yeah,
lifespan studies and stuff.
look here,
I would
look
have to have
here,
looked lifespan
look
studies.
here, fellas. You can't be sitting out in the desert wearing underwear all day. You gotta freaking start wearing pants, and we're gonna start giving you these shots, and you're gonna have to start using toilet paper and digging a hole when you poop.
Yeah, and then you can live for another 20 years.
Whatever, dude. They were
dude, come on, bro.
the Bushmen. The Bushmen are some of the most noblest people on the face of the planet. If you ever freaking did research on them, like the actual indigenous Bushmen, they're very spiritual. Freaking most of them wouldn't even lift a finger to hurt a person. You know what I'm saying?
How many into country wars
What? You broke
at the
up right
time?
there. You you're breaking up a little.
How many tribal conflicts happened at the time?
I'm talking about Bushmen. You know
And,
who?
and you can't really blame the well, I don't know where you're going with the tribal conflict, but when the Europeans, the colonists, these colonizers came down to Africa, there were already existing nations, existing tribes, existing boundaries. The colonists came down and said, "Scrap all that. Here are the new lines." And in that process, you have people who are cut off from family and then shoved in with their enemies. Yeah, there's going to be wars from tribes. Absolutely. That was the whole point.
Just
Literally.
reminds me of the old famous newspaper cartoon of Napoleon and King George the Third. Yeah, maybe. Yeah, King George the Third, carving up the world, treating it like I don't know, a pie, and just slicing off pieces of the world just to make sure, so they know what territories are theirs.
You know, and just kind of make this clear because I did mention autocracy, but with Cecil Rhodes that doesn't apply. Cecil Rhodes didn't rule um, during a time, or he didn't rule under autocracy. You know what I mean? He operated basically within the framework of the British Empire during his time period, which was a constitutional monarchy, and it had its own parliamentary government. It wasn't an autocracy. So Rhodes basically served as the prime minister of Cape Colony, of the Cape Colony, and he had representative institutions, but they were limited because of the racial structure, how structuring. You know what I mean? Everything was segregated, but that was like that here in the United States too. It was like that everywhere, kind of like what Mark was saying. I think they went a little bit too long and a little bit too heavy in Africa, though. That was something that really amazed me when it comes to Africa, because like there was more segregation and more racism in Africa
Yep.
than there
Than
was
anywhere else.
than anywhere else. That
You're right.
that is the most amazing part about the whole deal. You know.
The destruction of the black man was all planned. Absolutely.
Okay, so now the thing of it is like the one thing with Rhodes that really gets me is his imperial ideology. It emphasized the Anglo-Saxon dominance and the civilizing mission of the empire. That's what Mark. That's where Mark gets his old thing about introducing intellect to a society, and that's where you hear a lot of English people talk about it. Like this is,
Probably he was just a creature of his time.
you know.
It was just,
Well,
yeah.
you're a creature of your time, and you say the same exact thing, dude.
Well, yeah, because I'm looking at it from the perspective of.
Well, see where that stems
I
from.
tend to anyway.
Where that stems from, and it's the same place with Rhodes and his ideology. Okay, that stems from this idea that British rule is inherently superior. You know what I mean? And expansion under British authority would benefit the world. Like you should feel blessed that the British Empire has shined down upon you. You know,
You know what's
Sorry, I just reminds me of your sort of U.S. the greatest nation on the world argument.
that's why I had to say it. That's
so,
why.
yeah.
well,
Yeah.
you know, there's that thing that she brought up. I'm glad that she did the whole medicine thing. It's like, oh yeah, and the betterment of the betterment of another race, another culture, another country. But and so this was also said. I forgot who said this, but this is a quote. I gotta go find who said this. But someone said, uh, "The black man's lazy. They're content with just having cattle and women." Like, holy crap! What else in life is there? Women and food. What else is there? Oh, I know what else there is. There's taxes. There's being conscripted to the military. There's paying insurance.
Mhm.
you know, there's code enforcement. There's you gotta have licenses. You gotta. Oh, life was just so terrible for all this stuff.
Hmm.
You know, God, wow.
Well, I mean, it's like, before they were introduced to all that cool stuff that England was introducing to them, they didn't have to worry about all that. You know what I mean? They didn't have to wake up in the morning and go work at a freaking
9 to 5.
warehouse where, you know what I mean? It's like freaking
Yeah,
all of a sudden here comes England and now they have to worry about freaking some machine cutting their finger off.
they gotta worry about being thrown behind bars, being,
Uh,
you know, it's just, yeah, I don't know. The whole superiority thing, and we did such a great thing, like giving civilization. Well, first off, that whole thing about civilization, well, well, we
civilization
all know,
sucks.
this kind of thing started with humanity in Africa, and something that's not talked about in history at all. You cannot go to a single school in America and have one classroom teach about the Moors conquering Europe twice. Because, I mean, if you go to school in America, you go to history class, it's all about European history.
Hmm.
It's not about American history. It's about European history. But
Technically,
never
but it's
hear.
only history. It's only, as far as I'm aware, the American sort of state schools are to teach history from 1760.
Well, you
Whatever.
you guys aren't making
Onwards.
you're not making your arguments any better because like what you're doing is you're portraying all of this on a world view as justified rule over subject
Well, yeah,
populations,
you've got to be within that sort of
and
look
that
at it from
and
that
that's
sort of
without their
perspective.
consent without their consent though, right? That's without their consent. So in that sense, like Cecil Rhodes and the way you guys are talking, his philosophy would be more paternalistic and authoritarian in tone, even though he did operate inside of imperial parliamentary structures. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So even though he was doing that, his philosophy was actually paternalistic in nature, in tone. Because he had
Yeah.
he had that same ideology that you have, where he was actually benefiting the world by imbuing them with the
Again,
beauty
it's not
of the.
a ideology that well,
You've
on the most
repeatedly
part,
said it, dude.
I have personally, but again, I'm looking at it from the perspective of that time.
Well, you
That's my
you said yourself, okay, that before you said it actually on this episode. Like you said before freaking England was there, they had nothing. And then we came along and we educated them. We gave them
I didn't say
meth,
they had nothing. You're conflating what I'm saying.
well, I mean,
But I am stating that we brought in modern medicine. We brought in
now
common language.
a long time ago when I first
Common
actually
language.
did this, I wanted to actually do a study on how much modernizing indigenous civilizations
hold on.
did
Before
help.
you continue with that, hold on. Let me. So, the idea of a doctor and a medicine man, a very not new thing to anybody
Mhm.
about history. So, bringing medicine, that's not bringing a common language. That's not an argument either. English,
Modern
what? It's
medicine,
a truly
modern
true
medicine,
language.
penicillin, even though penicillin was later, I think. But
That's fine. You don't have
modern
to go
medical
rape
techniques.
pillage. You don't have to rape pillage a country in order to give them medicine.
Yeah.
Because that's kind of like that reminds me. Because like the United States government, they have all this weather warfare weapons, right? And they weather modification, call it. But they've sent these hurricanes to Louisiana, Haiti, Jamaica. They're trying to
Again,
destroy.
again,
Hold
allegedly.
on. But this is, and then upon that happening, it is required before getting any aid like food or water, everyone has to be vaccinated and going under some kind of birth control before they'll offer any other help. So, I mean, keep your medicine. Give me the food and water.
First of all, you are stating as a fact that the US has aided in river modification, even in those areas. There is no
They didn't. They still have
evidence
treated
of
black
no
countries
concrete evidence.
horribly versus any other like white country. They already have American contracts and aids and connected peoples, but so a black country gets screwed over by some, okay, let's call it natural disaster, quote unquote. Why is your first shipment birth control? Why is your first shipment
Now,
vaccine?
I do have an answer for that, especially when it comes to Cecil Rhodes. Okay, now when it comes to Cecil Rhodes, now the reason why you can't call Cecil Rhodes a part of autocracy is the fact that autocracy, you can relate that to absolute monarchy, which goes into governments like Russia, the old Russian Tsar Empire. You know what I mean? Under the Tsar, that would be autocracy. You can't say the same for like the English Empire, which depended on well, okay, Cecil, for example, or Cecil. He relied heavily on chartered companies, to rule when it came to expanding territory. You know what I mean? So that's how they went according to it. They, especially when it come to expanding into Rhodesia. He depended on these chartered companies to do it for him. So the British South Africa Company was formed, and that was backed by royal charter. So he used them to do this, and because he used them to do this, he's not considered to be a part of an autocracy. You know what I'm saying? This is a form of imperialism, basically. That's you know what I mean. So that
you can make the same argument for India.
So when it comes to sending birth control into South Africa, according to the logic that's been going on in Africa for this amount of time, or anywhere, when it comes to the British monarchy, it makes perfect sense from that standard. That's exactly what they would do. You know what I mean? It just, I know that sounds pretty messed up and pretty weird, but it actually, it would make perfect sense.
How does it make sense?
Well, you've got to take a look at it from a point of view of the British Empire, okay? And the British was all about setting up these freaking companies. Like here in the United States, they had, what was it, the Indie trade route.
The Indians pushed out the British, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
Not needed. Like get your crap and take it somewhere else, right? I think your argument is
remember the
hold on. I think your argument is a little bit
War.
different because you're saying look at it from the point of view of the British Empire. You know, they can justify anything they want. Well, the thing is, entire people have been victimized and or.
I agree. But see, what I'm saying is like this is a quasi
That
governmental.
works.
This is
Huh?
this is a quasi governmental authority, though. You see what I mean?
Right.
Okay, this isn't an autocracy, which is an absolute. It's absolute monarchy. Okay, that's what a autocracy is. It's absolute monarchy, absolute rule. Whereas what was going on in the South or in Africa was a group of quasi governmental authorities that were being legislated by Rhodes to do what he wanted to do. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
and that's the mentality that they've got there. So
But
and
I
that
mean, if you got something that you want to do, you got a mission. You let's it's like the Punisher. What you described to me, it's like the Punisher going into his war room, into his in his closet where he has all his guns, and thinking, do I want to use the M16 or do I want to use the Glock 9? Or what? Your method doesn't matter. It's the end result is what matters. You can call it an autocracy, you can call it an empire, you can call it whatever you want.
mhm.
It's the name doesn't matter. It's the result, end result of the actions.
How about the intended result rather than the actual result?
Hmm. Well,
Well,
you know what they say: hell, the road to hell is paved with good intention.
Yeah,
all right.
precisely.
And you also have to understand what's the difference between imperial authoritarianism and and autocracy. You know what I'm saying? Absolute monarchy. What's the difference between absolute monarchy and imperial authoritarianism?
I don't know.
It's the difference.
I just see a white man behind the desk oppressing a black man. Doesn't make a difference.
Let's forget nuance here. Just white man bad.
That was my 1970s freedom fighter character.
So basically, when it comes to imperial authoritarianism, I can use Cecil Rhodes as a good example. Okay, now company rule meant that corporate leadership took place, and that wasn't representative local governance. It wasn't controlled administration. It wasn't about land allocation and security. It was about company rule that determined all of that stuff. So
I mean, you have so much wealth being brought to the crown. I mean, just like with Columbus or anybody, because a small little gold chest from the queen, they come back with a bigger chest of gold for the queen.
well, see, we had a talk about this the other night about Ireland when it came to Rome, okay, and Otto said, it was weird to him that Rome didn't try to conquer Ireland. And this kind of goes into a little bit of that too, because it's like, okay, by setting this up, Cecil Rhodes created a structure that concentrated power into the hands of a small group that was aligned with his interests. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Now this goes back to the Romans when they were occupying frickin' England. They conquered frickin' England, but they didn't take Ireland. Now why would that be? Unless there were leaders there who were a part of the Roman armies that knew there was a lot of wealth over in Ireland, because Ireland had actually the largest copper mine. To this day, it's still the largest copper mine in history. They shut it down back in the 1960s, and before that, that mine was running for like 3,000 years straight. Okay.
Why didn't Rome manage to conquer Scotland? Because it was it was too difficult for them to do.
It would have been easier for them to take Ireland than what it would Scotland, to be honest with you, because Scotland was farther north, and they had already expended their freaking influence, like their resources to go any farther north. You got to remember that they were also over in Europe. You know what I mean?
Well, the thing about the Roman Empire is that it wasn't profitable. Yes, they stretched themselves over a huge area of landmass, but at the end of the day, the Roman Empire fell because they became broke. You have to have industry to go along with your conquest. They didn't do that. I mean, they started minting money out of wood. I mean, come on. They started changing out the metals, and they eventually went to wood. Nobody wanted it, so the empire collapsed.
Right.
They couldn't pay their own soldiers after a while. They got so overextended.
Now, just to kind of go further, have you guys ever heard of De Beers?
De Beers, yeah, diamonds, yeah.
Yeah.
Say thank you to Cecil Rhodes.
Well, I gotta say thank you. I've never bought a diamond in my life.
Mm-hmm. De Beers.
Not even for an engagement ring. I'm a frugal bastard, so whatever. I'm not cheap, but I'm frugal. But yeah, no. The fact that De Beers, that was a big joke growing up with some of my friends and I growing up. De Beers, man, De Beers. The thing about that though, you have a resource, and I'm so glad technology is progressing, because it kind of makes me think about the whole ancient alien stuff, because we have stuff we don't know. It's valuable, but we didn't know why it's valuable. Like, okay, diamonds. Diamonds are freaking useless as a jewelry. It's useless. It's not a symbol. However, if you stick a diamond inside of some electronics, boom, you got something. Or you creating other tools, even. So it has value there. With all this gold stuff, again, it's great in technology. It's useless on us. So I hate that we have to value these things. We're told they have value. They have value. Unless
I was just going to say, is a status symbol useless?
Right. Well, a status symbol should be supported by one's actions, not by what they're wearing. You know?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I just, a crown with diamonds and rubies and all that stuff sticking on the top of my head. I mean, why?
I mean, would you trust somebody that's wants to become the president of the United States if he just wore a sackcloth and walked around in a barrel?
He may be autistic and have some damn good ideas.
True. Would he get elected?
Would he get elected? No. Well, who do we have? Roger, that guy with the boot head guy.
Oh, that is Dr. Demento, dude.
No.
That was Dr. He's the one that it was the reading of oh God, what was his? He's Howard Hughes.
Okay.
Howard Hughes, the reading of Howard Hughes' will. That's something that I've been wanting to do here in a little bit. That's actually pretty funny. I'm gonna do a script of that where it's a reading of Howard Hughes' will. It's from Dr. Demento. Sorry, that's not a part of this show. I apologize.
I don't think that's Dr. Demento. There was a guy who was running for president. He wore like a boot on his head, and he actually did very well. He actually did very well.
Ross
Like that's
Perot.
how much. No. That
No,
no. But that's how much we hate our politicians. This guy actually had a chance.
why
I'm
does the
glad Mark
name
brought that up because that's
Johnson?
phenomenal.
Why does the name Johnson ring a bell in relation to that?
What year? Because when you say Johnson,
Mm.
you're talking about like in the 60s and
I
70s.
am thinking, 19th century, maybe
Oh,
even early 20th century, but
okay, yeah.
probably 19th century.
Now, another interesting fact that I do want to bring up about De Beers too is like they're still going to this day. Okay,
Yeah, I just had to look at the website, funny enough.
and the ownership, the majority is owned by Anglo American PLC, and that's owned by 85% of the company is ran by that freaking company, which is outright named Anglo American
Anglo.
PLC.
Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't that sick?
Yeah.
You might as well call it FUBU.
It's just like, and it's right there in front of people's face. They don't care because they love diamonds.
But this company, that company, Dangler Blub, has been around for some time, and it's the sort of concept of rebranding yourself, and yes, rebrands can be a good thing if your company was bad in first, if you had a poor sort of if you were viewed as a poor company in first place, but if you were viewed as a good company in the first place, why would you want to rebrand yourself?
Right.
Well, especially when they're like one of the biggest diamond freaking outfitters in the world and one of the leaders since the beginning. You know what I mean? This goes all the way back to like we had our gold rush here in the United States, okay? Africa had their diamond rush. You know, I mean, think about it like that. Like here in the United States, we talk about the gold rush of the 1800s. The same thing was happening in Africa, but it was for diamonds. And to be honest, I believe gold might have been a part of the whole thing too. I'm not quite sure, but I'm pretty sure diamonds was the big deal during that time period.
Other than rare earth materials, Africa has the most resources out of any other continent.
Mm-hmm. Now, I did come up with some pretty interesting things here. Now it says the company's 1947 campaign slogan, "A diamond is forever," is among the most influential in advertising history. It links diamonds with romance and commitment, boosting global demand for engagement rings and cementing De Beers' role as an arbiter of luxury and emotion in jewelry culture.
And that, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I was just thinking, what's that slogan just still memorable because of that one company, or I'm thinking, or is that slogan also memorable because of the Shirley Bassey song?
I thought it's diamonds forever. That's what I remember.
Yeah,
Ni-
the James Bond thing. Yeah,
1947 was when the campaign slogan first started for "A Diamond Is Forever." So I'm pretty sure that they came.
yeah,
Well,
but it's still.
that's a good question,
if
actually.
you
You
say
know,
that now, yeah.
yeah, you're right because James Bond, the actual guy who wrote stories for James Bond, was a freaking MI6 agent.
Well,
So,
you finally got my juices going here. So I'm going to go along with something that you said just now. The whole engagement rings and stuff like that. So this is also during an era of where the word romantic literally changed meaning. You know, It went from some old rustic, nostalgic sort of thing to, oh yeah, you gotta be in love with your woman. Um, and that also, so it's around this time, especially around the Victorian era. This, before the Victorian era, men married women for procreation and for wealth management, property, etc. Um, we didn't marry for love. That wasn't a new thing until the Victorian era, until today.
No.
No, I'm not gonna
Are
say
you
not in
saying?
large,
Yeah.
not by and large. People have loved each other since the beginning, but for marriage's sake, that's why men got married. And so,
Okay.
but now it changed into this whole romance thing, and if you want this woman, you gotta buy her a diamond. It's just the campaigns, the mind control is astounding. How you can just change the meaning of an entire word, and it will change all of society. One word, romanticism.
I don't know. I still
Yeah.
use romanticism, and I know Roger does within that sort of classical sense.
Yeah. Now, romanticism is very, very. I like romanticism, and not because of the love stories and the only reason why a man should use love stories is to get down a woman's pants, basically.
Yeah,
Okay.
basically.
Okay, so romanticism is far more than that. Like when you read stories like The Headless Horseman, that's romanticism. Moby Dick is romanticism. Um,
Right.
you know what I mean? So uh, that's the kind of stuff that I get into when it comes to romanticism. So it's like and I try to explain that to ordinary people, even people who claim to be writers, but they don't seem to understand that that's where romanticism is all about. It's a form of writing that's more than just love stories.
Right.
So I used to do NaNoWriMo here in the United States, and when I did that, I'd have to do like these writing things where you get on the internet and talk to people about your stories, and I'd have all these little geeky kids on there talking about their stories and shit, and I'd mention romanticism, and they'd be like, "What are you talking about? That's not romanticism." I'm like, "Yes, it is, dude. Do the research." You know what I
Right.
mean? But they had no clue.
Yeah,
Right.
but it's this the sort of modern getting the viewpoint of or getting a modern. How do I say this? These people have been brought up in a sort of modern society that has been the certain words have been eroded, or certain meanings have been eroded from words, such as a simple example, the gay happy thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, exactly right. There you go.
Yeah, like
Or even more appropriate at the moment, the usage of the terms Nazism and fascism, which is used all inappropriately.
interchangeably is what I like to say. Interchangeably.
Also inappropriately as well
Well,
as.
yeah, exactly. And okay, now that brings me up to something that we've had a conversation with on my other show, that Rogers Real Time Talk Show, when it comes to romanticism. Like romanticism was hijacked by ideology. Okay, this cool word idealist and being, an ideology. People don't understand what that's all about. That was people who were into philosophy, who were intellects, and they were a part of the government structure who took romanticist romantic movements and romanticism, and they freaking used it to where they could create what we call ideology now. Okay, where we created these ideologies that people should follow. So if you want to get a movement going and you want to get freaking a community to group together and do what you want them to do, you create this romantic ideology that they freaking stand up for and they freaking cheer on and they want to freaking be a part of. Okay. That's what that's all about. I'm glad you mentioned that, because that's what we actually went through. It got complicated between the French Revolution and when ideology started forming. You know, I still think I need to go and do a deeper dive into that because it gets a little bit confusing. Oh man, you guys.
Absolutely. You know what? Yeah. See, this is conspiratorial right now. I like it.
Mhm.
All right.
Well, I mean, it's all if you look at it, you know what I mean. Like I was talking about autocracies. Okay, that's a form of government where political power is concentrated in the hands of a single ruler.
Right.
Okay. And this person exercises authority without any kind of meaningful constitutional limits.
No checks and balances. Yeah.
Nothing. No democratic accountability. No nothing.
Right.
You know. Now, when you look at that word, okay, the word comes from Greece. It's a Greek word, and its root meaning means self-rule.
So,
Okay. That's referring to a system where one individual governs by personal authority rather than a shared or representative structure. Okay.
right.
So when you see these words, you look at the word autocracy and where the hell do you pull that? You know what I'm saying? How does that make sense to you in regular language when you're trying to figure out what the hell that word means? It's purposely disguised where it doesn't even freaking sound like the actual meaning of what it really is.
That's the beauty of words. Words were created so that we can convey an idea, and it's not always the truth. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Even disguising. I mean, the thing about the government is all this legalese, this sorcery, the psychological and societal sorcery. They have to tell you what it is that they're doing. Even if they have to change the words to mean something else, they're still going to tell you what they're doing. It's definitely up for a person to be educated and figure it out for themselves, because telling you that you have to, I don't know, any example, anything. They tell you, like it being enlisted into the army, enlistment. What, did you come in on a draft? Oh, well, no, you didn't enlist. You're conscripted. You were constricted. You were forced out of your home, put into a group of people, and told you have to do what they do, or go to jail. So yeah, I mean it's all in the language, and I think the English language. Okay, first off, totally screwed up. Most screwed up language on the planet. We have so many mixed from other places. It's as where we are the virtual Tower of Babel with this language. But yeah, I mean you can double speak, no problem, depending on how well versed you are with your own language and how structured your language is. Yeah, it's very deceptive. I'm sorry.
Just one minor point on that.
It's good.
It's good. But just one minor point. You said you sort of implied that government created, or governmental bodies created the words.
No,
Well, I
they
would argue
use
that-
them and they twist them.
Yeah. Well, language.
Yeah,
like,
but don't.
All legally
Isn't that more of a common parlance sort of thing, rather than governments per se?
well, I kind of get where he's coming from because I agree with it. Like
No,
when
I
it comes
guess
to
not. Yeah,
when
I
it-
sort of get. Yeah,
like with legal writs and everything and legal jargon. You know what I mean? That's a completely different language than what me and you speak.
is entirely different language.
You know, so I do understand like that. But like especially when it comes to autocracies, autocracies differ from democracy in fundamental ways. You know what I mean? Because like in a democratic system, you know, authority is distributed across institutions, and leaders are usually accountable to voters through regular competitive elections and stuff. Okay. Now, in autocratic systems, leaders typically remain in place through force, usually through force or patronage, inherited rule, you know, or manipulated elections, or a combination of all of them put together. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Now, this could be even when elections exist. Okay.
Mhm.
Because that's because most of the time they lack freaking like genuine competition or transparency. So they're easily to
Sure.
manipulate. And that's kind of where I was wanting to go with like this underworld element that has to do with the spy networks that took place here in the United States during and after World War II and into today, you know, and what's really taking place. And I wanted to bring Africa up because, and I want people to remember Africa. Africa, believe it or not, is the
Yeah, it's
key
a great song.
well, Africa is a key player in a lot of this stuff. Okay, it's a very
Yeah.
key player, and
Of course.
you're going to find out how freaking government officials came up with documentation that stifled people because they were freaking from what they termed as third world countries. They encouraged the idea of freaking starving these people out and making them freaking their populations dwindle because they were from third world countries, and they advocated international laws that allowed this kind of shit to take place. And that's because they didn't want the competition. They didn't want these freaking these people to freaking actually be able to develop enough to where they could become future competition against them. You see?
But from 1950s onwards, the tables have turned quite a bit.
Look, we've got 10 minutes till midnight, and I want to table this until later and come back to it
Okay.
because this is I just wanted to let you guys know what direction we're going with this, okay? Because I know it sounded a little bit confusing to you. I came out first of all with Elon Musk, or Holderman actually, and then I started talking about the One Nation Under Blackmail, which I think if you guys get a chance, check out Whitney Webb's One Nation Under Blackmail. It's a really good book. I've been able to do a little bit more reading on it. But after that, that's where I wanted to come back in here and start talking about Cecil Rhodes, and I wanted to get more into autocracy. But well, we can get more into that a little bit more. But I do want to get to the criminal elements that I was just discussing, how that applies to freaking like politics and the underworld here in the United States with the supposed criminal element. You know, how criminal are they for real? You know what I mean? It would kind of it would blow people's mind if they actually know what took place historically.
Okay, you're gonna have to explain a bit more about Yeah, like you say, you go on all the
Well,
time. But I'm just thinking that this isn't a United States phenomenon.
Oh no, buddy.
No.
well, hold on.
No.
Bring into that. Let's let's pay attention to the language here. And I think Mark would
Only
agree with me
United
here.
States phenomenon, should I say?
But so, okay, for example, you use the word criminal. So, I mean, who decides what is criminal and what is not? Oh, you know, you can call people a race of savages because they do this, but that's by someone else's metrics or someone else's standards. And especially when you have double standards and different metrics in one society that deals with different people.
Mhm.
For example, my one example I will always give. So let's talk about cocaine. All right, cocaine was in such an abundance. Everybody had it in the 80s, right?
Mhm.
80s, 90s. You get caught with cocaine, slap on the wrist. However, you add water and baking soda to that cocaine, and you turn into crack. It's still the same substance. It just has a couple more ingredients added to it, and you will get 20 years to life in prison for a quarter-sized piece of cocaine. I mean, I'm sorry, piece of crack cocaine.
Mhm.
Yeah, but you still get in prison for cocaine in the United States, don't you?
Well,
Now my point. Hold on. So
Okay, carry on.
you have white people who do cocaine, which is a slap on the wrist, and you have the black people who do crack, which can get you put life in prison
mhm.
at that time. So criminal, to say criminal, you really got to just think of what's morally right and what's an atrocity and what is not. But crime is, you know, I'm committing a crime right now. I've got something downloading. Guess what? I'm a criminal.
Well,
I
porn doesn't count as a crime, dude.
Whoa. Just
No.
one point on that.
Uh-huh.
Technically, you're not a criminal until you are
Convicted.
prosecuted, until you are convicted. You are innocent until proven guilty. That
Right.
is the basis of Westernized legal system.
Innocent
That's
till
true.
proven
That's true
guilty.
legally, but socially speaking, you pepper somebody with, let's say, like black people. You pepper them with like the crack. I'll bring back the crack thing,
Mhm.
and then so you have a society that thinks, oh, all black people are just drug addict criminals,
All right.
as they pull out their bag of cocaine and sniff it.
Now,
So
that's
it's a double standard.
no, it's more of a stereotype to be not
Yeah.
not just a double standard, because if you would remember back in the 80s, like cocaine was the white man's drug.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then freaking cocaine or crack moved in, and when crack moved in, all of a sudden that was when cocaine became available to everybody. So it hit the ghettos real hard, you know. And I do understand that part, because that's something that I do want to be bringing up as well. And this kind of goes into all that. Okay. Now I want to end this so that we have time to step away, get ourselves some drinks and stuff before we come back and do another episode. But before we do, I want you guys to give everybody your socials so that they know how to get in touch with you, and then we'll end our conspiracy episode, starting with you, Mark Edworthy.
Again. Okay. Minds.com under the username Medworthy.
Okay, how about you, V?
Well, you know, you can reach. Take that with.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you do want to reach V, you can reach him through me. I am on Teams as well as Elements Matrix. You can find me at Rogers Hangout. If you're on X, you can find me at Roger Hanson at ROGLOL1973.
And if you're not on X and you're on crack, well then you're probably.
Now, if you're on minds.com, you can find me at Roger_Hanson, and I am also on Locals at Live with Roger Hanson. Now I've got my Patreon account too, which is Roger Hanson. You can check me out there if you want to join it. It's free to join it. You don't have to pay to be a member. So I encourage everybody
Also,
to check that
also,
out.
if you are on ecstasy, is the left from Alpha Centauri next to the flying the blue unicorn.
Don't get me started on Alpha Centauri. I already made a comment earlier tonight about that. So, with that, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, please like, subscribe, share, make comments, give us some feedback. Let us know what you think. We'd love to hear it in the comment section. All right, the chat's cool, but we'd love to hear from you in the comment section. So, with that being said, I hope you guys have a good night, morning, afternoon, whatever time of the day it is there where you are. And we're going to end this.